Welcome to AI Industry Discussions. In this vlog, we'll discuss AI and the implications of AI in different industries. Topics such as AI maturity, data collection, and the org around AI and industry-specific use cases are what we will be covering. Our guests today are Isabella Holm from Reaktor and Christian Landgren from iteam, two hot and fast-moving companies in the digital advisory arena. Welcome, Christian, and welcome, Isabella.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We also have my colleague Björn Treje, as usual. And since we are in the midst of the corona times, I guess we are all working from home. Perhaps not Christian, or are you at home also?
Yeah, I'm from home, yeah.
Okay, nice. So we are super happy to have you here because you represent something a very, very sort of, a lot of people are working in the digital sort of advisory consultancy sphere. And we are super interested to hear what you have to say about AI, what you have stumbled upon, and what kind of trends you are spotting out there in the real world. But before we get into that, it would be super interesting to hear just a short description on what you do, your respective companies, and what roles you have. Do you want to go first, Isabella?
Yeah, sure. Hi, really nice being here, by the way. And so I'm Isabella Holm. I'm a strategy director at Reaktor Stockholm. We just opened our 7th global office in Stockholm. It took us 20 years to get to our neighboring Western capital from Helsinki, but we made it. We've been around for quite a few years, but now it's kind of official and it's a lot of fun. I guess what I do is that I help our clients make sense of their changing business environment, maybe from a strategic point of view in their when working on products in the digital arena. Yeah.
Thank you. Christian, who are you?
I'm from the start I was a programmer, and I started this company iteam 25 years ago, and I've always been interested in tech and programming, but also in kind of societal changes and business changes, how the world will change because of technology. So that's pretty much what I'm doing, and I'm forming my company as kind of a catalysator. What's that in English? for change. In the beginning, we were working mostly with startups, and we've helped quite a few of the Swedish startups on their journey. But now, since the last maybe 5 or 6 years, we've been concentrating more on the traditional industries and helping them to go through this change. And they say they are ready, and sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. And we try to help them to kind of how they should think or how they could think. Mainly we do that with teams instead of just selling consultants as CVs. That's a business model I don't think will suffice in this change. So a big inspiration actually for us has been Reaktor. That's pretty much our big brother in Helsinki, I would say. They are much bigger than us, and they're kind of I think the companies in the industry is actually better suited in Helsinki and Finland rather here in Sweden. So that's an interesting topic to discuss, the differences between our markets. Because
and this is actually a funny kind of thing connecting us, is that there are so many similarities in kind of our values and what drives us when working in digital, since it is so we're kind of we've talked about this with Christian a lot. So basically the dedication to cross-functional teams working together, committing to the projects that we are on. That's something that we feel is moving everything and everyone forward. So I guess also our offices, we moved from Helsinki further to New York, Tokyo, and Amsterdam and so forth, and it seems to be resonating. So yeah, we'll see. Stockholm is also a very special place with its own culture in this. So excited to learn more about it through Christian as well.
It's super nice to have you today. It's the first time you have two guests at the same time here. We'll try not to speak at the same time, everybody, but I know that'll probably be a challenge. So I assume it seems like you've done business before together, Isabella and Christian.
Actually, we haven't done business yet. I think probably will, but we've been having a lot of discussions and having a lot of interesting ideas going back and forth to understand the market and differences. Yeah.
All right. And speaking of the market, since we've sort of established that you've been working in many industries, but you don't really represent the typical industry other than sort of digital advisory. How would you sort of describe the sort of maturity of AI with people you meet?
You have to say which one of us that should.
Okay, Christian, you go first.
Okay, thank you. So, and I realize that when you're on stage, it's much easier because you see in the body language who you're actually talking to. So,
by the end of the year, we're going to be pros on this, all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure too. So, yeah, I think that the maturity it depends in many ways who you're talking to. But I think that for the last maybe 2 years, I would say, the maturity within the bigger organization has been becoming much, much better. 2 years ago, we started our own initiative, kind of an AI offering to companies that could get our help to get kind of specific machine learning and AI advisory. But back then, there was not enough maturity at all, and not any market at all, I would say. Now, I think it's much better. I think that more companies have now a new head of innovation and head of digital, and maybe a few people working in that space to understand what's going on and try to find out how AI and also data and other types of kind of future sustainable strategies will play out in their business. So I think it's much, much better now. So I look forward to seeing this even more, because it's still in the early games, I would say, for a lot of companies. And I'm sure you have the same experience from Peltarion's side. So yeah, so the maturity is starting to get there, but it's very, very early, I would say.
Yeah. Isabella?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Christian said, and I guess it's also, we've been following the whole development with different businesses and AI for quite a long time. We have around 40 AI experts currently at Reaktor. We're around 550, so it's still kind of quite a big portion, and it's showing that it's becoming a bigger part of the business as well. But basically, I guess it's quite a lot. I would divide it into 3 questions, kind of describing some sort of maturity level, what the clients often ask. So the first question is always like, where should we begin? That we know we should do something with this AI technology or this new cool thing, but we don't know where to start. Then the second one is basically being worried that are we already behind everyone else? Like, are we late to the party? And then there's kind of that a sense of urgency in a way. And I guess what most of all I feel is that sense of urgency is actually a really positive thing. It's like embrace the sense of urgency. It's a good feeling. And I would also say that this whole AI maturity discussion or digital maturity discussion is kind of a highly emotional topic discussion. And I guess we'll talk more about that later. Then I'd say just the third question that they ask. So first there's the where should we begin? Are we behind everyone else? And then there might be the feeling that, okay, so now we've tried something, but we're not really seeing an impact yet. So, you might have a chatbot, or there might be some proof of concepts that have been tested, but what's the actual value that it's providing to our business? And then there's kind of this sense of uncertainty of where we should be heading. So I would say that quite a lot of organizations they're not maybe at question 1 or 2, but they're kind of at question 3, if I'm somehow simplifying it a little bit.
I think that was a really good summary. I agree to 100% with both of you, but the 1, 2, 3 sort of approach sort of puts the spotlight on that we have actually moved a bit. I think a couple of years ago, it was CEOs running into sort of tech teams shouting, "We need an AI," and they had no idea, no clue what to do and what it would mean or whatnot. And now the question is much more, what kind of value will this AI give me? And that is also an interesting topic, because it tends to be a very big difference. It seems like there's an even wider gap now than a few years ago between the companies that have managed to harness sort of the AI potential and the ones that have not. And it makes sense, because some industries, have a much longer journey. But there's a really, really big gap between the digital sort of the big tech companies, basically, that started with this early on. And the rest.
But we've been around since '95, so we've been seeing all these technologies coming along, and always it's the same thing. It's the board of directors or the CEO that comes into the IT departments and throws something on their desk. We need to have an app. I need to show that our company also have an app to the rest of the board of directors, something like that. And that's the same with everything. Like, we need to have blockchain because that's something we need to learn, and we need to have AI, and that's basically the fuel for the hype curve. That's always what happens, and because you think that there's going to be something that it gives you value directly, but it always takes much more time, and it always finds its spot after a while, and that's and I think about me and Isabella, we represent companies that are playing the long term, like the long tail game, and when you do that, you kind of you learn that you have to experiment. You have to find the first small iterations and small nuggets of value for some companies, and then build a little bit from there, and continue on with until you see that this is exactly how it should work.
And if you, as you say, the initial hype is driven by CEOs, etc., just stating that we need this. And if we pass that, what would you say right now is the main driver for actually doing more IT? Because I know a lot of companies are still pretty far off actually getting value out of it.
Yeah.
Isabella, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. I think that the reason why it's difficult to give a simple answer is that they're basically every single organization, when they start working with AI, their kind of situation is unique, completely unique. So what makes someone succeed, or what makes one thing work in one place won't necessarily work even at the nearest rivals in their systems. But basically, of course, what's starting to happen is that that AI is being taken into the core business of organization instead of just being left somewhere, in an IT department. But this, what Christian was describing earlier, was, I think, really spot on how it sometimes can go. It's like that there's an epiphany somewhere high up in the organization that we need to somehow do something about this. So there's the sense of urgency. So that's the emotion kind of driving it. And then it's something that actually, since AI is so related to business problems and questions that are relating to kind of the business side of things. But then the business leaders easily might kind of throw the whole issue at the IT department and kind of leave it there. Like, hey, we have this, there's this, it says that AI is a technology. So, could you deal with this, please? That they don't kind of want to maybe touch it because it's perceived as belonging to the tech department or IT department. But as we know, of course, that's not the case. So there are so many aspects related to it. So everyone has their own kind of infrastructure, their legacy, their own whatever data that is the foundation of everything. So that means that all of their machine learning solutions are unique in that sense. And then measuring it and being able to take the insights out of what has been done is, of course, like the next step in that capacity. So I believe that the ones who are succeeding, especially from the ones that are not just born digital, but have kind of a more challenging infrastructure history, that they have really learned to also not just use data, but also to build insights that drive the business from that experience.
Yeah, there's so many questions I want to ask. I gotta, make sure I pick the right ones. One thing that I thought I'd bring up at some point during this discussion, might as well now, is when we're talking sort of AI maturity, my perception is that Finland is much ahead of Sweden as a whole. That may be just me or not. What would you say, Isabella? Do you agree now that you have moved to Stockholm?
I think it's also kind of a complex affair. So we have both countries have a national AI strategy of sorts. So there are initiatives like this on the national level that are going on. There are EU collaborations that are kind of affecting all of the EU member states that are also being developed. But yeah, sure. So for instance, when I was having a talk with Petra Dalunde from AI Innovation of Sweden a couple of months ago about drones, for instance, just as an example. So how much of a challenge it is that the legal framework is completely different in Finland and in Sweden, which I didn't know. But that's apparently also because the legal framework has been made more flexible towards these new kind of technologies in Finland currently. So then there's a little bit more space to move. Another aspect is that, for instance, in the public sector, we have some initiatives where capabilities are kind of being developed together. So it's not, you should, obviously, it makes sense to collaborate on like, let's say, we have the Aurora program where you build a chatbot development environment and testbed, basically for the whole nation, that every public sector actor can use. So there are these kind of initiatives that might be a bit further along the road than in Sweden, but of course it's really difficult to kind of simply compare and say how things are. But then of course,
like
yeah, sorry,
I interrupted you. You go.
No. So that's kind of the regulatory side of things. But then we also have naturally, like basically, maybe there's a sense of that AI work is, or the capabilities built like in the private sector as well, are a bit further also in traditional industries, food industry or so forth. Than maybe in Sweden at the moment.
It seems like the authorities in Finland and other institutions were very early, were quick on this topic to make sure that Finland was part of the head of the spear, so to speak. One thing that absolutely should be mentioned now that we have you as a guest, Isabella, is of course the fantastic course that Reaktor and University of Helsinki has put together. I'm a official graduate myself.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, sure.
I forgot the name.
Yeah, basically, I guess that's actually the thing that most people in Sweden who haven't heard about Reaktor might have heard about the Elements of AI course, which is basically because the fact is that our headquarters moved to a new location and we became tenants at the University of Helsinki. This is kind of the background for it. And then we were just talking with them and wanted to figure out something that we should do something together now that we are kind of living, in a close relationship. And what it was supposed to be was, of course, just something small, and it ended up becoming this quite a massive phenomenon. So globally, I think we have participants in this AI. It's the fundamentals of AI for free, with the aim of just democratizing the knowledge around this, massively important piece of technology. And of course, at this stage, it has had more than 350,000 participants globally.
Wow!
I think we have representatives from every country in the world except North Korea. So the global has been quite massive. So if anyone feels the slightest interest to check it out, I highly, of course, encourage everyone to do so. And there are also some more free courses like this coming up with more kind of deeper levels of AI work and so forth. Yeah. But it's kind of funny also because one important thing for us was when we're talking about accessibility of information about this kind of technologies, that you have to explain something that's quite complicated in a tangible way. The design of the course has to be fluid, and at the same time that quite a lot of IT and tech related courses are subconsciously directed towards a certain group of users, which often are men in a certain kind of age range. So with this also one aim was to make it to kind of take this into account. And I think it's quite nice that globally we have 40% of the participants are women. So that's been still quite a nice success as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is, I mean, it's of course I'm a graduate as well of the fantastic course. No, I really appreciate it. I took it before I joined Peltarion actually, because I thought it was just a super initiative. And one of the major things why I think is such a good thing is that you address one of the big obstacles in AI adoption, which is sort of sharing the knowledge, making everybody aware of what can be done and what is it about. And we spoke also about legislation and compliance, which we know are huge obstacles. But I mean, and we know that a lot of big companies in Sweden and all over the world, they wanna do AI. I mean, they wanna go ahead of this, but still, we don't see much coming out of it. Why do you think that is, Christian?
I think I too think this is a wonderful initiative, and I think the main reason for that is that when things are complex or complicated, you start to kind of send it off to the marketing department and try to get it as simple as possible, so you can broadcast a new message and just make easy decisions. And with AI and digitalization and all of these things that we are talking about, that's not the case. You can't really force these matters to be simple. But you have but if you want to navigate through these things, you have to start learning. You have to have a mindset of learning. You have to grasp these things without forcing them to be more simple than they are. And I think right now, I also think in Sweden that we have, in the whole world right now with Corona and the response to Corona, I think we have a really big lesson to learn. Like instead of trying to make this as a simple do these things and everyone would be fine. We just go through the whole experience of a complex change that no one can predict. And I think those things are quite important to understand here, that we can't really use the old methods of decision making and try to put a bunch of people in a room to investigate and do depth of research to understand what we need to do with AI and find our big decision, then go with that. And that's I think one of the big problems right now, that understanding needs to happen. That understanding needs to go as high up as possible in all organizations right now. That you can't force these complex problems to be simple in order for you to make a decision. So you have to learn, and that's why I think elements of AI is one of the biggest drivers in that way, because it's more easy than that. It's very hard to get. So, but it takes a while for you to do it, and you get actual university points for taking it. So I think that's a really good driver to actually start learning about these things. And looking at the Corona, we saw mathematicians, describing the math and the calculus behind all these complex mathematical equations that is behind these predictions. And I'm so happy to see that, because now you can't really make those complex problems or complexity just go away by just talking. You have to start understanding them. So I think those things are so important right now, and so many more have to start understanding these things before you can actually start navigating through them.
I think that's actually, you put it so amazingly well there, that there's we always want to simplify things. It just makes can't this just be easy? Like, isn't there a shortcut?
Yeah.
So a lot of organizations, they are waiting for, let's say, do they want to be the first ones testing a new platform or AI product, or develop their own tailor-made, solutions with a certain logic? Well, many organizations kind of feel that no, they don't want to be in the front line here. They want to be sure that what they invest in is kind of smart and tested and proven and so forth. But then we're back again at the fact that this is kind of a different kind of technology that just, it doesn't function like that. You can't compare, the successes of someone else. It's not a plug and play type of solution for most part. And what we can see is like that the most important or crucial thing, of course, this is what you all know and what is generally recommended, is that it's a focus on having the capabilities to basically to be able to manage whatever situation arises with the use of AI. So what you, Christian, was also talking about Corona, and I just read a piece by MIT where they had noticed and researched realized that a lot of algorithms kind of have become a bit broken now during Corona, since people are behaving in a way that's not normal. So predictions, even like basic stuff, it can be recommendation engines. It can be something really, we're talking about something really common and simple, and it just becomes really twisted because it's not able to take into consideration what the situation is at the moment. And I think that's quite fine. But then the problem becomes, it's not like the algorithm itself, it's just that, does our organization have the capability to somehow deal with this issue? No one could predict that this, Corona would happen exactly at this point in time. So I guess it's all about those forms of capabilities and challenges that might be surprising.
In my experience, all the companies I've been working with, those companies who had a sort of a R&D process of doing things all seems much better equipped for actually sort of ordering AI things than more traditional service companies. Because if you're used to R&D, you know that there's a lot of spending going into just trying things out. While the more traditional service company are used to maybe buying things like traditional IT projects. Okay, what does it take? How much will it cost, and how long will it take?
But I also think that it's in many ways different in this case. I think that AI in this case, you can't really send it off to an R&D department and then wait 2 years and then evaluate and make a decision there as well. You have to be part of it. You have to, if you're sitting as a manager in a bigger corporation and you're not aware about the different capabilities that AI could have you have to be much more involved, I think, rather than just having an R&D way of looking at it. So the way that we do it in our company is that we put together a team where the client is highly involved, and not just the the programmers and the developers and things like that at the client, but also decision makers. They are stakeholders within the team. They sit together, and it's a journey for them to learn as well. And by doing experiments, by having hypotheses and making these decisions more as a startup would do it. And we were talking a bit earlier on why the difference between Sweden and Finland. I think one of the differences is that we have both a really successful startup community. So, which makes our self-esteem quite high. We have Spotify, we have Klarna, we have all these great companies that have used AI and machine learning for a long time, and we have wonderful people living here that knows these things so well. But we still have a lot of bigger corporations that loves to buy SAP and Microsoft and SharePoint and Teams and Office 365 and things like that, and they think that they are, this is the future. Now I can, share a document and my colleague can use it. That's digitalization. So it's very divided. We have this self-esteem, and we think that we are better than we are. And you brought up an excellent point, Isabella, about data and open data and also open source. We've been looking at Helsinki, and in terms of transport, you have great, assets and public spending that have been produced, a lot of open source projects that we have been using as a company for our clients for many years, and I'm so grateful for that. But the same thing doesn't go the other way around. In Sweden, you don't have open source and collaboration in the essence of your operation. So I would say that we have a kind of a bridge or gap between these two, like the industry and the public sector on one place, and we have startup on the other place, and there's a big gap between them. And I would say that in Finland, it seems to me at least that the gap is not as big there.
Yeah, that might also be because we don't have as many massive startups, even though it's a flourishing scene. I mean, just as you said, because that is the other side of the coin, that in Sweden, I mean, so much is going on. And what I think is that from a regulatory point of view, then it's kind of a national question. But otherwise, I think what you talked about, also open source and the whole culture around that, that's a huge enabler that kind of takes us away from this national competition in a way, like who has the right strategy or the best, startups or something like that. I think it's more that we're seeing kind of that that's where the potential lies, and that's also why, for instance, AI solutions now. I mean, we know that it's having a tailor-made AI solution with a cross-functional team, like Christian mentioned, is a lot more kind of cost-efficient nowadays than it was just like 5 years ago. Even there's a lot more kind of there's a lot more also AI-related open source stuff available to be used. So that's actually really helpful for this development, at least in our experience and the organizations we work with as well. So maybe it's quite common that everyone is afraid that when you get something that's tailor-made for you, that okay, so this is going to be expensive. But actually, as said, that's not the full truth at all anymore. So that's a nice development.
Yeah,
Sorry, Christian, you go.
No, I think that there's a misconception about custom-made solutions, that you write everything from start, and that's how it was in the late 90s. You could let a consultancy company build your whole CMS system and pretty much your database in order for you to get a website up and running. That's kind of how it was before. So, but nowadays, if you work with an agency or consultant, and you get a custom-made solution for your company, a cross-functional team would obviously use whatever building blocks that are available to use in order for you to get as much value as possible for that. But so I think there's a lot of misconceptions in this area, and that you have to either do everything yourself, and you have to have your own staff in order for you to be successful or cost efficient, or you have to buy something off the shelf. And I think both of them are not enough in this situation. When you need an innovative edge in your company, you have to bring in kind of someone else from outside to give you a little bit of outside view of your company and your business, and also experience with the technology that you might not have. So that's a kind of an opportunity for a lot of companies to start working in that in the gap between these two extremes, I would say.
Yeah, that's kind of nice that now, I mean, there are so many positive sides to both. So we're starting to have really cool like AI products that make a lot of sense. And then there's also the ease of like, creating some optical character recognition, OCR program, for instance, just tailor-made with Python it takes a couple of weeks. It's a quick and dirty process easily that can then fill the kind of specific needs of the organization. But yeah, so there's both. There's also maturity in that's happening. So it's not just the organizations that need the AI solutions, but also kind of all of us providing the different parts to it.
Yeah.
Speaking of organizing, we have spotted some changes here and there in companies how to organize around these type of projects. One example I brought up at a different one of these interviews we did was a company that had employed data scientists and machine learning engineers to be part of all the development teams, so traditional back end or front end teams, to make sure that they harness data and the data pipelining works from head to tail. Do you have any other sort of trends or have you seen anything out there? Are companies actually changing their organizations to deal with this sort of new ways of working, or is it all the same?
I think the usual way that they try to do it is through PowerPoint. You take your organization chart and then you kind of divide it up into new names of boxes, and you go back to your work. And I think if that's true, I think that's a really good trend. I haven't heard. Of course, it's true, but I haven't heard about it before. So that's really good. I think, and that's what we mean with cross-functional team. That you put together a team with not just the IT department, but also kind of market and business and the data scientists, UX designers, and everyone that needs to be part of this innovation. And then you create something, and you don't know before you start what the solution will be. You have some idea about the problem you try to solve, and together you probably will end up with a better solution rather than the business decides everything, or IT decides everything, or data scientists decide everything. So that's pretty much what you need to do, and that's going on. I know in the finance in Sweden, we work with a couple of clients, and they're trying to merge like IT and business by removing them, and then have something else replacing them. But this is a process. It takes time, and I have a lot of respect for how long this takes. But I'm also a little bit afraid that we are putting too much time in thinking about the optimal solution in this. And I think one of the best things we heard when we interviewed a larger corporation around the change structure. How did you start? And she said, we just started by starting. We just took time from every Tuesday, and we started doing something. And we hid all these hours from our managers and reports and everything until we have spent I think about two months of work with her whole team in something new. And then she showed, the managers and everyone else that this is what we have built. I'm sorry for not, for lying about these hours. And, they went to San Francisco and got a lot of prizes internally in that organization. And so I think that's also very true, that you have to start somewhere. You have to just start. You will not find the optimal solution. You just have to get your hands dirty.
I love it.
Yeah.
Start by starting.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's exactly how I also, it really resonates, Christian, what you're saying, and also like all of the various organizations that we worked with from the beginning of their kind of AI or data journey. I mean, first of all, I think there's a misconception with the fact that AI isn't. I think people believe that AI is used less than it actually is, because quite a lot of companies or organizations already have, advanced, they just call them algorithms quite often, that are related to core business. And then there might be kind of that I kind of, I also see this as it's like the positive thing is that there's a lot of untapped potential in all the knowledge that already is present in the organizations. So I think that's like a super cool thing that's kind of bubbling under that I would like to see kind of flourish. So, and that's just about not leaving, not scaling that knowledge base or those experiences. So that relates to what you were talking about. It's not just about scaling like infrastructure. It's about scaling the knowledge and the learnings from the things that we've already tried and tested. And then what Christian was talking about, starting small, is another thing that I don't know how to put this, but basically most of the first versions or the first things you test with some sort of an AI little thing involved, it's usually something like extremely simple, like so simple that you might be even ashamed to say it. Like it might just be about dividing something into, blue and red, or it might be about having like a newsletter be targeted in like different somehow personalized categories, like really, 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 really simple. And then that's the way where that's where it begins from, because what we learn is starting to ask the right questions. So if one focus or an important business related question is like, what's the reason for we have a high like customer churn or something like that. So we want to understand that better, like have better segmentation or better, more qualitative customer insights, and AI could help us with that. So when you get from that first question to more kind of even more detailed business related questions, so getting there requires that you have, like Christian said, both the data scientists, you have the business people, you have the IT people, you might have legal side of things, you might have some a lot of like humanists involved as well. So basically it's kind of having that, starting somewhere, involving the right people basically, and focus on scaling not just the tech stuff, but kind of reserving resources to, well, at least half of the resources to everything else. That's the tech.
I like the way you phrased this story about the first steps are quite often so small that you might not even consider them being AI, or just because you often end up in this discussion of high volume, low impact use cases, or high impact, low volume use cases. Where in the sort of traditional consumer sense, only the high impact, fancy and cool stuff are considered AI, whilst the sort of low impact and the very repetitive high volume stuff, they're just computer doing stuff, automation.
But I do think that the AI, the word AI is magical in its nature. It has been around since the 60s, and it's always been meaning something else. And whenever you reach that, it's we redefine it all the time. So the best definition I know is that AI is whatever haven't been invented yet. So. As soon as you take away the magic of the stuff that you were trying to do, then you learn something new, and that's exactly what Isabella says. Like that's the journey. That's the fun part of it. You start asking new questions, and that's the important part. So which means that you can't really expect an AI investment to just lead to a new or have an end. Now we're going to focus on this for half a year, and then we're done with it and we can continue. That's not how it's going to work. You're investing in AI. You're going to learn new things, and in the beginning you're probably not going to learn get any value at all, except for the knowledge and the questions and the culture you inspire in the organization. And remember that, you know, with surveys for data scientists, they say that they spend, I think it's 86% of the time just reaching the data and clean the data, and 5% of actually applying some sort of AI algorithm or something. So, you know, there's a lot of other work than that you could start with directly, and that's pretty much what we decided 2 years ago. You know, when we realized that this is too early in this market, so we started to focus more on the data part of AI. The kind of where is the data stored, and how can you make sure that that's compliant with GDPR and the, you know, self-sovereign control over that and things like that. So we've been working with Arbetsförmedlingen in a really interesting open source project called Egen Data, where we let users get control over their own data, which means that, as you know, organizations can just start tapping into the data that the user already has and store their data in the user space instead of store it in at their place. And I think that's something that at least Europe will need to invest in quite soon, because otherwise we're going to be all this, you know, as we all know, that the data is, you know, it's really necessary to have the data before you can start doing anything with AI.
True.
I have to add that I just came to think about that what you were talking about, that everyone kind of that AI it creates so many associations. Everyone has the narrative, you know. It's either the magic wand that kind of has a promise of solving everything for you, or then it's the dystopia, you know, the control state, everything. So basically what I'm thinking, like the stage we're at, and which is really, it's kind of frustrating. If I would be, it's like AI is some kind of celebrity on Tinder, you know. Everyone wants to go on a date with you, but no one really knows you, and no one, when they learn more about you, they might not be so interested. You know? And this is really, I don't know, it's like, it makes me a little bit sad. because there's like this inherent misunderstanding. It's basically, it sounds so exciting, it's a bit mysterious, you know. You've seen all of the movies and everything, and it's subconsciously already in our minds in that narrative. That's also why it's so extremely kind of emotional. I've dealt a lot with kind of emotions and technology, you know, as blockers also for organizational transformation. But that's really, it's kind of, it's a huge challenge. So what are you actually making a decision about? Like, who are you, you know, marrying in a way? If you want to have AI in your core business so that you really kind of unleash its potential in some way. I mean, everyone wants to benchmark, you know, Spotify or Uber or Google or something like that. But sometimes I wonder, like do organizations really want that? Like, do they really deep inside wanna be that? Like, what's the right decision for you, basically? Like, one of our clients we worked with for a long time, and from the scratch, we had 3 people involved in creating their first kind of AI implications, the first kind of machine learning models. Currently, they now have around 10 people from their own organization who like as a centralized function reporting to the leadership team. So it's kind of a part of their core business. And this is a very big organization. But basically what happened there is that, they did they got to know, you know, what they could do a little bit by like what we've been talking about, experimenting, failing a little bit. This is also a traditional industry. So this is not like a born digital company. And but what basically happened, or what made the change, was that they made a decision. So the leadership made a decision to basically build automation. They gave it a name. They recognized that AI is related to this. And I'm not talking now about like proof of concepts, but the proper kind of vision. But it still took, like, from the beginning of that journey, like it wasn't sure that they wanted to kind of commit to this technology, because as we talked about, it takes so much time for it to deliver some often, like a lot of time for it to deliver any really deep value. So it took them around 3-4 years to get to that point where they had enough kind of a foundation to be able to make that kind of a decision. And now what has happened is that the ownership of everything AI related, so it resides and lives with the business side of the organization. But in kind of as a counterpart to that, you have the tech folks that have full autonomy in how they basically realize those visions. So it's kind of that divide, they've managed to somehow close that gap. And we have been involved from the beginning, but I mean, I'm kind of lifting my hat to them, because that's the whole point of kind of enabling organizations to kind of start that journey and build that capability so that they're not dependent on anyone else. I believe that's kind of the road forward.
So how come
to tell you what, sorry Björn, I just realized that time flies when you're having fun. So we have actually spent a little more than we have. I think there are so many interesting sort of starts for topics. We could probably do an entire series with you people of these interviews. Super interesting. As a sort of ending sort of question to sort of, before I summarize a little bit, what would you like to see when you are visiting a client and talking about these topics in, say, a year or 2 years' time? Christian, well, you go first.
What I want to see, I want to see them commit to this. I want to see them, a little bit terrified what's going on in the world with a lot of competition from other places, and they have realized that they can't really just ignore this huge change, because it's not just AI. It's kind of the whole digitalization structure that changes the world, and the way that it also changes consumer behavior, and also with Corona and everything has been accelerating that. So I hope in 1 year or 2 years, a lot of the big organizations and clients have pretty much their own teams, autonomous teams working with both AI and innovation in their core business, very, very, extensively. And if they do, I really want to be a part of that.
Sounds like a nice future. What do you say, Isabella? What would you like to see in a couple of years' time?
I think that was a really good question. I'd say I'd love to see organizations that would really ask super tricky and critical questions. I think that's a way forward as well. I think it's kind of really, really like asking, but being curious about what the reply might be. So maybe kind of asking those questions, but with a mindset of curiosity and kind of awareness of that there are a lot of, in a way, biases and assumptions about everything AI related, and that kind of, I don't know. So a combination of embracing that sense of urgency by starting to ask questions, and then kind of in a few years' time, I also hope that questions, they wouldn't be too focused in a way on the tech. I'm not saying all that. I mean, that's super essential, just like data, obviously, but basically thinking more about what kind of an organization do they want to build and have, like what's the actual vision that this could support, and I think that's something that would make me really happy.
Fantastic. So our time is up. We have covered a lot of interesting topics, going from the differences and similarities between Helsinki and Stockholm, all the way to what we would like the future to be when we meet our clients. So thank you super much, Christian Landgren from iteam and Isabella Holm from Reaktor. Best of luck out there. Hope we can do a follow-up with you in maybe a year's time. See what actually happened. And thank you all of you that have been listening to this AI industry discussion, and see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.